So welcome everyone to another episode. I'll kick it off, I guess. We've got our first guest, so it makes it a very special guest tonight. Ron, you want to tell us a little bit about who we've got?
Well, I've known him now we've probably known each other now for maybe a little bit over a year, I would think so, Kenny, exchanging messages and everything like that. I've been a very big fan of his work and his research. And, this is Kenny Irish, without any further ado. But he's the CryptoPunk. He has a book out right now that is just blazing through the Amazon world. It was number one there in its category for a while. And I think it's probably only about number two, though, right now, isn't it, Kenny?
Last I checked, it was at number 4.
Number 4, okay.
So,
yes.
So yeah, it's dropped. It hit number 2 again. I'd say maybe the end of last week. Like it was going back and forth between 3 and 5, and then it hit number 2 again. Some sales picked up on it, but it's been doing well because it released March 9th. So we're going to be closing in on 2 months, and it's still in like the single digits, which is
still going strong. That's right.
Yeah.
So Kenny, since I'm just meeting you and Gina and Colin are, tell us a little bit about who you are, especially where you got the CryptoPunk moniker.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah. Well, I guess when you think about folks that are, cryptozoologists, there's some people out there that have been doing it so much longer than me. And I kind of, in my opinion, don't really kind of feel like I should even stand on the same ground as them, just because, they've just got so much, that they've contributed. And, so to be honest with you, I've got 2 major passions. One is music. Like I love playing music. I've been playing guitar since I was 15. Been playing bass since I was, I think maybe like 22 or 23. I actually just recently bought a drum set and started learning drums. But music, like I love music. I've retired the stages. Like I don't play out anymore. I just play, just in my spare room in my house, and just enjoy doing that. But I played in tons of like punk and hardcore bands. And my other passion is writing. I love writing, and I love mystery, lore, legend, and cryptids. So me and the gentleman, his name's Gary, he heads up the research group that I'm with called the New York Bigfoot Society. And my hair's like a lot longer now, but it was shorter before, and it was always kind of in like a mohawk. So he was just kind of joking around and called me the he's like, you're like the cryptopunkologist, and I work in sales and marketing. So I'm just like, oh, that's like marketing gold. So I'm like, so let's see what happens. So
we have the crypto guru and the crypto kid, so CryptoPunk fits right in.
Awesome.
We love that.
Awesome. Yeah. So
you're gonna have a brand.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like, I'm like, okay, well, I'm half the cryptozoologist that all these other people are. I'm like, so how can I fill the other part? Well, music, I love music. So, so that's how we came up with the cryptopunkologist. Somebody, my friend just kind of gave the name to me, and I'm like, well, I'm going to market it. Let's see what happens. And so here we are like a year later, and it's like, anytime you punch in any Google search or whatever, the cryptopunkologist, guess whose ugly mug pops up now. So it's a good thing, and I walk around with the nickname with pride too, because again, it's, I really enjoy what I do. It's a passion. So, so that's kind of how the name came about, taking the 2 passions that keep me going and keep me ticking, and just combining them together.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, I do have a very serious question for you. Say that you were on a plane and you crash on a deserted island. You're going to be saved in 1 year. What 5 albums would you have on that island with you? You can only have 5.
I would have the best hits of Tommy James and the Shondells. That would be my number 1.
Going back to yep.
I would have the albums, the Misfits first album.
You gotta like the Misfits, yep, of course.
That's right.
Yeah, I would have definitely have Hatebreed's first album. I love Hatebreed. Let me see. I would have the best of John Cougar Mellencamp. I love John Cougar Mellencamp.
Nice.
And then for number 5, I would have to say that it would probably be the Oak Ridge Boys Christmas, because I love the Oak Ridge Boys
right.
and I love Christmas music. So I'd say that those would probably be my 5 albums.
And you will be there for a year. So after a period of time, you're going to become unaware of what the day is. So you can probably play that at any time and still satisfy your need.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Agreed.
And before we get on all the cryptid stuff, I understand it, but if you play punk music, why Oak Ridge Boys? Why John Cougar? I mean, I could probably give you why I think, but I'd like to hear why from you.
Well, you know, I love Christmas music, and I grew up like listening to the Oak Ridge Boys Christmas album. Never listened to any of their other music, but it was played in my house all the time. So it's like got like good memories behind it. So John Cougar Mellencamp, there's just something about the simplicity of his songs, but yet the message behind it. And I mean, they're literally like 3 or 4 guitar chords, but the beauty behind it is just like, I don't know, I guess I kind of like that Farm Aid rock kind of sound.
Yeah.
And I really, you know, he just kind of like stood the test of time, you know, and he's still out touring and playing. And, you know, so I just really respect that. Plus, Kenny Arnoff was one of his drummers, who's a phenomenal drummer. Like he's played in like, you know, like Smashing Pumpkins and different bands like that. So, so I guess, you know, just, you know, he's one of those guys that's kind of like accepting all the way around. And again, there's something about his music that's just kind of relaxing, but yet kind of, I don't know, just relaxing, but yet very upbeat at the same time.
It's John Cougar, the Boss, and Tom Petty. It's kind of like those define America.
Yeah. You know what, though? I will have to tell you, though, that I think that John Cougar Mellencamp, Rain on the Scarecrow, is probably one of the best American songs ever written. And I don't think that Bruce Springsteen ever came close to writing anything that's visceral in any of his songs.
I agree. You know, and you know, the Boss did a lot of good songs. I mean, he did a lot of stuff, but I think if we put those two side by side, I still think Mellencamp, you know, is just, you know, he's got number one, and that's not knocking two. Number 2 isn't a bad place to be. So, I mean, it really isn't. A lot of people say it's the first loser, and it's like, well, you know, there's many times where I'd rather be the first loser. You know, I'm okay. Right. I'm okay with number 2.
I love all your choices because I play music, and I've never liked being defined into one genre. I mean, I mostly play rock, but I was in a country band, and I played on a cruise ship. I played jazz. I played orchestral.
Awesome.
So music's music. You know, I love that.
Yeah. You know, and that's the thing is like you can really be drawn to one type of music, but still see so much appreciation in all the other music. And you know, there's some people that aren't like that. You know, they're just like, well, this is the music I like. Okay. Well, you know, everything else sucks. Okay. Well, I guess our conversations are going to be short and sweet because I don't know, you know. Again, I mean, you know, what really got me, you know, into guitar and everything, part of it was, you know, when I was younger, you know, watching like Motley Crue videos and stuff and seeing the girls and be like, oh man, I want that to be me. And then
Steve and I just had to talk about this the other day.
Yeah. Nice. You know, and it's funny too, because, you know, I look back now and it's just like, you know what? I could probably get every single one of those girls now, you know. It's like they're like in their 60s right now drinking tea, you know, and I'm in my mid 40s, so I'm like young and hot. Well, I'm young to them. So let's say that. But you know, as far as go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt. I was going to say though, that's actually wrong. Having played in several genres, play in a country band because the country girls look way better than most of the rock girls, and that's where it's at. And there's less guys competing. So
sure,
at least there used to be. I'm getting too old. It's probably different.
Right. Yeah, you know, the big thing for me, like I remember, you know, being in like 8th grade and stuff like that, and playing like soccer and just kind of being like kind of jock like, and And it was probably the end of my 8th grade year. And, some of the girls decided to kind of go like, like punk and stuff like that. And I'm like, I like that look. I was like, I like that. And that was kind of, what kind of, led me over, to the, the other side of, cause again, I was at that point in time, I was listening to, like hair bands and, different things like that, nothing wrong with them. I love them. I still listen to Hair Nation on Sirius XM. But it's like, I just, that's what kind of brought me over. I remember somebody gave me a mixtape with like the Misfits on it, Minor Threat, this and that. And they're like, listen to this. And I'm like, okay. And I brought that home and popped it in my, my Walkman and listened to it until the batteries died in it. And it was just like life changing. And then that's when I kind of, started, really, really kind of getting into punk. And then, and obviously hardcore came from punk. It was literally the crossover. And then I remember, again, being introduced to, some bands that were, kind of crossover, still sounded like punk, but, had these like breakdowns, and I'm like, oh, what is that? And then, so that's just kind of what got me into music, and, or it got me playing and really got me kind of pumped up and doing all that.
Now, we have to ask the obligatory question now is, what got you into the realm of cryptozoology?
Okay, that actually happened. I'd say where I really got into it was probably my senior year in high school. Prior to that, growing up, like every little kid, I loved the fact of, I loved Godzilla. I loved King Kong, the Incredible Hulk. I still tell people to this day, I still want to be the Incredible Hulk. But I would say that, sorry, call come in on it. I forgot my laptop at work, so I'm using my phone. So, but it was in my senior year. I mean, I grew up, I'd heard of Bigfoot, different things like that. But the thing for me was I lived in northern Vermont. I lived near Lake Champlain, and I'd heard that there was a Godzilla type creature living in Lake Champlain called Champ. And from that day on, I was just all into that. But I'd never heard of like, cryptozoology, cryptids, never heard anything, like that. And then it was my senior year in high school. I ended up, I had to take a class for some credit. So I'm like, I'll take another English class or whatever, we'll probably do some writing, because I enjoyed writing growing up. And I'm like, whatever, just for, the credits. And it was called Gothic Tales. And the teacher, his name was Mr. Devine. And it happened to be, he was also my mom's English teacher. So he'd been teaching for a long time. So it was kind of cool to hear that. And so the whole semester, all we did was watch like science fiction movies, Stephen King movies. And then when the movie was done, we talked about it. So, nice. So we ended up doing this segment where, it could have even been the Patterson Gimlin footage that he played or something, but he played something for us that had to do with a Bigfoot. And I remember, like, I remember it, but I don't kind of remember it, because it was one of those things where I was kind of paying attention, but I wasn't. And then after we started talking about, people, how they, they go out and they look for, Bigfoot, they look for different types of creatures, monsters. And that's where I kind of got pulled into it. Nice. And then, I graduated high school, went to college kind of, and, gave it the old college try, and never got the degree, just kept taking classes, because I'm very, very cheap, and I did not want to pay for classes that had nothing to do with what I was going for. So I've got so many classes under my belt that I should have a degree. It just, I dropped out of the degree program. So I just, went to college, was doing this, was doing that, kept following the music that just kept calling to me. So I was, reading up, doing a lot of, research on different cryptids, since like, I don't know, 19 or 20 years old was when I really, started, researching and looking into it. And then I kind of got pulled into the Native American lore of it. And then I really fell in love with it. So, the majority of the research that I do and different things that I look into, I usually go back to, what the Native Americans said, and because we owe a lot of what we know nowadays to, the stories and legend that's been passed down by them. So I just continued, as I was playing in bands, and then met my wife, we got married, bought a house, had all kinds of responsibilities. And, so I'd say probably in 2012, maybe, I kind of got back into writing, not music, but just like actually like writing stories. And I ended up getting my first book published in 2014. One of the loves that I have is I love writing young readers chapter books for ages like 5 to 10. So the first two publications that I've actually released to publishers were young readers chapter books. The first one was called Kevin and the Upside Down Halloween. And then the second one was Stanley Riker and the Bigfoot Runaround. So, I've just been, again, writing kind of in that age group. And to be honest with you, when I stopped playing in bands and stopped playing out on stages and stuff, and I'd say that was probably around 2006, 2007, I really kind of started diving into like cryptozoology and cryptids. But I didn't really come out of the cryptid closet, if you will. And what I mean by that is, playing in bands, and that you played in bands, you're in a lot of spotlights, you're in a lot of different things, you deal with a lot of crap, you deal with a lot of criticism. I just wanted to just enjoy the subject, and just nobody even know who I was. Absolutely nobody know who I was. So I was enjoying that, writing books, doing lectures in schools, elementary schools, for third grade classes, fourth grade classes, reading the book, just doing that, just having a good time. And then I signed on with a publisher back in late 2018, 2019, right around there. And, signing with another publisher, I'm like, okay, I've got to sell some books for this publisher. I can't just, hide around. So again, so I came out of the crypto closet per se, and, just been, going from there, and, getting my butt kicked every day on social media by everybody who hates me. But, it is what it is. And, I enjoy it. Again, it's a passion. And, so that brings me up to pretty much today and where I am right now with you guys.
That's interesting how you said about putting yourself out there. There's a lot of trolls on the internet, isn't there? A lot of people that are very anonymous will take stabs at you. I've never really worked with Katie Elizabeth hand in hand, but I mean, she's a friend of mine, and we've talked a great bit. And she's got to the point now where, I mean, she's getting basically harassed by people. There's a lot of policy out there in the world, and if you come up with something or whatever, a lot of people, take precedent of that and everything else like that. But I appreciate you staying in there, your steadfastness, because that's what we need. It's so easy to get blown away by what people say, and I just kind of, shrug it off at this point.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I mean, I run a business during the week, so it's just, I've got really thick skin, so it doesn't really bother me. Every once in a while, like I'll see, I let it roll off my back. I keep scrolling, but every once in a while, there's somebody that, I'll be like, all right, I'm gonna make an example out of this person, because there's just one guy recently. He's always posting stuff about me, this and that, and pictures of me. And I don't know, I think the guy's got a crush on me, but whatever, that's his thing. But I finally said, you know what, I'm just going to call this clown out, and he goes to me, he's like, this isn't going to look good for you. This is going to ruin you, this and that. I'm like, really? I'm like, do you seriously think you're, this is one of those guys where, okay, so my name's Kenny. Okay. If I said, hey, my name's Kenny, he'd be like, well, actually, it's one of those guys, and the thing is like, I see him, like, he'll write stuff about people, and he'll use these big words. And it's like, okay, dude, I know what these big words mean. And I know that you're just pulling these out of your butt. It's just like, he's so arrogant. And it's just like, every once in a while, again, like I said, I just got to crush a bully's soul. So, so I reached out to him, and the funny thing is, he said to me, he said that question, what are you, above criticism? I just looked at, I said, yeah. I said, I'm above criticism. Why do I have to take criticism? Why do you think this is okay? And first of all, why are you upset that I'm criticizing you for criticizing me? But you can't take criticism, it's just like, yeah, sure we can all take criticism, but we don't have to. Well, I mean, when did that vote go out where we said, okay, it's got to be okay for somebody to criticize you, especially, in a social media type of sense?
Is it criticism because of a bad fault, or just trying to be mean and get you? I have no problem if Ron says, hey, I just read this book, let me tell you, this chapter didn't work, here's why, and criticize it. Great, tell me all about it.
That's different. Yeah,
but if you just want to say, well, who could believe a guy that plays in a punk band and he doesn't even shave his mustache the correct way? Really? Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and that's the thing, like, it's like, for about a year or so, I mean, this guy, was different things. So it was about a year before I finally said something. It was funny because he did one post, and like all these people, like, because I'm not, he runs one of the Bigfoot groups, and he did a post, and like, I ended up, some people were telling me about it, so I went and looked at it, and all these people like came to my aid, which I thought was awesome, and the more I was looking at it, it's like the guy, like, his first post was, anybody, has anybody heard, I've never heard of this guy, who's this so-called expert. First of all, I've never called myself an expert in anything. And second of all, okay, you consider yourself a researcher, you're out researching Bigfoot, but you can't find me on Google. Are you serious? Okay. It's like, and he said something, about my appearance, and I just told him, I'm like, dude, you look like this guy looks like he's homeless, and I'm like, dude, I feel like I should carry loose change around with me in case I run into you, and again, to sit there and he's like, oh, this isn't going to end well for you, this and that. Oh, whatever. You know what?
I'm sure we'll get some for what we're doing in the podcast, but
oh yeah.
So okay. So sorry to interrupt. I was going to ask.
No.
So your book's called American Cryptids.
Yes.
And I looked through it. I know Colin did. You basically took every state, which it sounds like there may be a 51st one coming up, if you haven't been following the news. But you took every state and found some legends of some cryptids and some reports. And what you said earlier about Native Americans, I love, because I agree. They were here way before us, before the cameras, before people wanting the fame. And they have some very interesting tales to tell and legends they've passed down that are like, well, how do you explain that? It makes it harder to disbelieve when there's no reason for it. Though they also believed in water gods and tree gods. And so tell us a little bit why you chose to do a book in this way. Because you could have done a whole book just on Ohio. So why'd you choose to do something like this?
Well, when I originally started writing it, it was very much, it was, I guess, and I don't mean this in like a bad way, but it was very generic and already done the way I was doing it originally. Like, like I was doing chapter 1, like the Wendigo, chapter 2, the Chupacabra, all the greats have already done that. They've already done it in that format and that formula. So I was sitting there and I'm thinking to myself, how can I make it this different? What can I do? What if I'm going to write this book, I want to do something that everybody else hasn't already done, and present something new. So I was just sitting there brainstorming, and and I just said, okay, well, how about I challenge myself too, not just to, come up with an idea, but how can I challenge what I'm writing? And I said, well, why don't I do all 50 states? Because that in itself is a challenge, especially when you're doing a nonfiction book, because I mean, there's a lot of fact checking that you have to do. So I'm just like, this is going to be tough. This is going to be tough. So, I just laid it out and I just said, you know what, I'm going to do all 50 states. But then I was like, okay, well, what am I going to do with all 50 states? So that's when I said, you know what, I love American history. I love Native American lore, which is also history. So I'm like, you know what, I'm going to open each chapter up. I'm going to do a portion on the state talking about, the history when it achieved its statehood. different, manufacturing or different products that came out of certain states, and talk about that, and then add in the Native American, how they lived, how they hunted, add in, some of the things that they, that certain tribe from that state, potentially feared or spoke of. So I did that, and that was kind of the formula of the book. And then the next portion was, because I just didn't want to do each chapter on just like the popular cryptid from that state, because again, it had been done. So the next portion was about like the popular cryptid from that state. And then, so that's kind of how I went through, gave some history on that, and then ended it. I wanted to end each one with a cryptid sighting, but it ended up being, every single one of them ended up being a Bigfoot sighting. So how I ended up pulling that off, because that was the other thing. I'm like, I can't get to all 50 states to interview people. How am I going to do this? So, and I didn't want to be that guy that just goes on the Google and goes to the BFRO website and finds one and puts it in there and plagiarizes and does this. I just didn't want to be that guy. And that, no offense to anybody who's done that or is doing that. I'm just saying I didn't want to be that guy. So I did use Google, and I pulled up Google Maps, pulled up the state, found an area that was just covered with woods, forest like, and then zoomed in until I found the nearest town to it, small little mom and pop town. And then what I would do is I'd find the little corner store, the barber shop, the diner, find which ones they were, call them up and just say, hey, I'm writing a book and I heard there's been some Bigfoot sightings in your area. What can you tell me? And that's how I did it for every single state. And if the person who answered the phone hadn't had one, they knew somebody, they were able to get me in contact with them. So I was able to get, a Bigfoot, a potential Bigfoot encounter. I say potential because some of the encounters that I put in there, the person wasn't 100% sure that's what they saw, but it resembled it. So that was the other thing with it, was I didn't want to put in, because some people gave me some incredible encounters, but most Sasquatch encounters and sightings they last seconds. And I had some people, that were giving me detail that, I mean, even if you were 10 feet away from a Sasquatch for a minute, you wouldn't have been able to give all that detail. So some of them I was like, okay, I'm not gonna use this one. This just sounds, there's just too much there. The other thing that I looked for with these sightings was, if somebody was like an actual like researcher in Bigfoot, I didn't talk to them. The people I wanted to talk to were the people that weren't looking, didn't believe, and didn't care until they had whatever the encounter it was. So those are the people that I targeted, and those are the people that are actually in the stories, and the encounters that are in the book at the end of each chapter from that state, are people who just weren't looking. They saw something that they couldn't explain, and it resembled a Bigfoot. Most of the sightings were 30 seconds at the most. And those are the ones that I really wanted to go with, because again, it's like these were also the people that didn't want their name. They wanted to tell somebody about it. So people that really, they didn't want anything in return. They just wanted to be able to kind of talk about it, maybe even get it off their chest. So those are the ones that I put in for all 50 states. And I never had to leave New York to get any of them.
That's a really interesting and unique way to do the research and contact people. Yeah. It'd be interesting to continue that line and maybe do a whole Bigfoot thing, talking to people, picking them that same way, just randomly, reports maybe that nobody else has ever gotten a hold of.
Yeah, and I like the idea that you didn't go to people that claim to be researchers. Mm-hmm. They're usually coming at it with some sort of preconceived notion or a
right.
bias. And this way you can get an unadulterated account of what was going on. And I like that idea very much. And the book flows very much as if it's very conversational, which is another good. Mm-hmm.
Well, I tried it when I was writing it too. I'm like, what's the best way to put this together? How do I word this? So I'm like, in reality, my goal with it for each chapter also was, you're not just reading about it, like I tried to write it in a way where I'm taking you on this journey. I'm taking you through the state. So it's kind of like we're together. It's like a travelogue, if you will. And the other thing with it too was, from a marketing point of view, anytime I pick up a book and it says, there's a chapter that has something, hey, Vermont or whatever. Well, I'm from Vermont. The first thing I do is I go right to Vermont. I look it up and see what it says. So I'm thinking, okay, anybody, who picks up this book, they're going to have many choices of books that they can purchase that day. My book's going to have something where it's personal to them. It's going to be about their state. It's going to talk about their state, and they're going to, maybe feel, more of a connection to it. And to the other thing too, is people have said to me, well, you shouldn't say this portion to anybody. I tell people this all the time. I've got nothing to hide. Like you, Ron, you do different lectures here and there. You go to different states, this and that. Well, read one of the chapters from beginning to end. Okay. And guess what you're reading right there? You're also reading my presentation in my lecture. Because my whole thing that I've learned over the years is if you're going to go to a state, you should really know something about the state and talk about the state. Oh, hold on a second. My thing's getting wacky on me again here. What's it doing?
Today's interview brought to you by the
Yes. So, to be able to talk about the state that people are from, again, you make it personal. So so if I'm going to be in Tennessee next month, so you can go to Tennessee and for the most part kind of see what I'm going to be talking about, where I'm going to be going with it. And so that was the other thing too, was I'm like, no matter what state I'm in, I now have my presentation. I now have what I'm going to talk about, how I want to go about it. It's already there, and again, a lot of people are like, well, you shouldn't say that because then people will buy your book, do this and that. Then I'm like, fantastic. Right. If they do that, then fine, because, I've learned a lot by reading other people's books. I've learned how to do different things by reading other people's books. And, if somebody, takes that and they take the formula that I put together and the way that I wrote it to go out there to give people a good experience, while they're on stage and people like it, fantastic. All more power to you.
And Ron and Colin, you guys have both done talks and you've done the same thing where you adjust what you're doing to include more from the area you're in.
Yeah, everyone I write a different talk essentially for the location and the audience. I do have a question. I didn't read like every word of the book, but I did skim through it and read good portions of it. And it seemed to me that it was very light on analysis, like looking at explanations for the cryptids and the stories that you wrote about. I wanted to know basically what was your reasoning behind that decision in the book.
So you mean as far as having just like a portion?
No, well, why didn't you spend any time like looking at like explanations as to like what these things could be is more of my question.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I mean, because to be honest with you, I wanted to more, again, not try to really look for explanations for anything, because when writing this book, I also wanted to kind of keep any of my opinions, I guess, in a sense, kind of out of it, of why, because, you can look up, different, like you can look up Mothman and you can find all kinds of reasons why the Mothman may have existed, could exist, what it could be. So for me, it was just, to me, it's just kind of like, I feel like I kind of go around and around because there's no accountability in the subject. So you can really say, this could be this or this could be that. So I really actually, in a sense, wanted to kind of keep my opinions out of it and just talk about, encounters, talk about what the creature was, what people have believed and what they've seen, and just kind of leave it at that. So again, where I was more of like the tour guide, talking about, what folks have said, not necessarily saying this is what I believe.
Okay. So it's like you said, a travel log. of interesting cryptids.
Yeah. Well, that's a good point, though. So, what do you believe at the end of the day, after amassing all this kind of research and listening to so many people talk about what they've experienced? What do you think is going on out there, Kenny?
I get asked that question a lot, and I pretty much answer that. One, I don't know because every time I think I'm getting onto something, something else takes me in the other direction. So, for me, I believe that there's enough evidence to suggest that there's something out there, that there's creatures out there, there's beings. What they actually are, I don't know. I used to be probably about 99.9%, let's say with Sasquatch, if they were flesh and blood. Well, now I'm 90%, which I like that because it leaves more room for conversation about it with individuals. Because if you're some folks, if you're so hardcore and you got that line drawn in the sand, people, then now people are choosing sides, and I don't want to be that guy that puts any type of line in the sand. I want to be that guy that encourages conversations, across the aisles of belief, if that makes sense.
I got a question, and speaking of, that's the first thing I did. I opened up Ohio. Let's see what's there. Then, Ron, I opened up Pennsylvania just to.
I appreciate that. Yes.
So the first story you have in the Ohio one, the Native American story, it's about a creature, the Lenopzika or Iska, something like that. But it's an underwater creature, and I thought that was interesting because Ohio is not exactly filled with rivers and lakes. There's quite a bit, but it's not known for that. Why did you choose that for the story for Ohio?
Well, you're talking about for the Native Americans, right?
Yeah.
Because that's when I was doing, the research on that certain group, that was one of the things that for each state, that was one of the, whatever the lore that I went with on it, that was what would keep popping up when I was researching. And again, some of it, I'm like, for some places I was like, kind of like what you're saying, like, it's kind of weird, but I also don't, I mean, you're talking hundreds of years, so I don't know what the ground surfaces looked like hundreds of years ago, so, it could have looked very different, just like, with like Lake Champlain, where Champ is, that used to be part of the Atlantic Ocean hundreds of years ago. Now it's not, it's its own freshwater lake. So it's where the research and the reading just, kind of kept directing me to.
Okay. Interesting. Gina, we've kind of been yakking without you. Do you got any questions for Kenny? Oh, I talked to her. Oh,
I've had it mute the whole time because there's dogs running around and kids are really loud and dogs are peeing on the floor. So I've had to run in between while listening to everything.
Welcome
so
to our podcast.
Hey, listen,
I like it.
That's how it goes, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Life gets in the way,
stuff like that. So I've been trying to run back and forth and listen at the same time, but I'm enjoying it. It's very interesting, but I'm sorry. I got to do mom stuff.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Well, okay, there I am. Sorry, guys.
I should be doing dad things as well too, but I see my son in the periphery coming in, and I say, I bought you a toy today, and that was your kind of, your keep you quiet. So remember, I'll take it off of you. So yeah. Do you have any kids, Kenny?
I do. I've got a 15-year-old daughter.
Okay, now what does she think about what you do?
She thinks I'm retarded.
Okay, this is a good point. I have 5 children, okay? My oldest son is 20, but I have 2 girls who are 17. The other one is 14. The 14-year-old will not be seen in public with me if I'm doing anything in my state. She'll go out of state with me because she doesn't know anybody there.
Right, yeah.
Any talk in Pennsylvania, she will not go because she's afraid that she will be outed as my daughter.
Yeah. I mean, I remember, when, she still wanted me to marry her. Yes.
Yes.
It's like, yeah, now, but I mean, depending on what's going on too, like if, I happen to, look popular to a certain group, well, then
Right.
she's all in on it. But,
Well,
other than that, yeah, she's just like, I mean, she's going to be with me next month in Tennessee. That'll be the
Very
first
cool.
time that she's coming out on the road with me. And, so that'll be pretty awesome.
Yeah, very cool.
But
very
yeah,
cool.
I mean, she's a good kid. She loves her dad, and again, it's she's a teenager.
That's right. That's right.
Mhm.
And they're difficult ones. I remember whenever I did it. Oh, somebody's talking to her. I started to hear voices. I don't know if that was the other side coming through.
I think it's you, Ron. None of us heard a single thing.
Is that right? Gina, I hear something. It starts with a G. It starts with a G.
I just was commenting on teenagers. That's
Yes. Oh, yes. You know about teenagers as well, too.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
They're so lovely.
Yeah. Whenever my show came out on the Travel Channel last year, I remember my daughter Willow sat on the couch and she just started crying. And she goes, "What happens if they find out that you're my dad?"
Oh,
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's always great. It's great, But like I said, well, the thing is, I met Colin because his dad would bring him to these shows.
What a great dad.
It is a great dad. See, that's the thing. This family right here, the reason why we're doing this kind of podcast together is because it's one of the unique families I've ever been around. They're very genuine people. And like a lot of times whenever I'm doing things with my kids, even though that Steve and I are right around the same age, I still look to him as my mentor and how I'm supposed to operate a family, because he will do anything out there. He'll take these kids out on their little whims and everything. But I think that it makes for a great family at that point of view.
Yeah.
They're always having fun. They're always out on the road. They're always exploring things. And I really want to be in that family. So now we have the cryptic clique here together.
Yeah.
awesome.
Still working out together now.
That's awesome.
So, Kenny, out of the book, what's your favorite story, or what's the favorite thing you learned that you're not expecting or something like that?
I would probably say the thing that I learned was how many actual sightings that there are. There's so many more of creatures than I could even imagine, because when I was doing the research and trying to get encounters, I really thought that it was going to be that was going to be what was going to put me over the edge, and this book wasn't gonna finish. Was finding an encounter to put from each state that again hasn't already been recorded somewhere. I really I didn't expect there to be as many people that I don't know. It's just people. I think they're a little more forthcoming now that like cryptids are cool now. Where for the longest time, like for instance, it's people ask me all the time, why is Dogman so popular now? Why are all these encounters, people are coming out of the woodwork saying they had a Dogman encounter? Well, if you look at it now, go back before the show Finding Bigfoot. People had heard of Bigfoot, people may have watched a show like on the History Channel or something like that, but there wasn't anything that was kind of ongoing. Finding Bigfoot made Bigfoot mainstream. So now it's cool. It's kind of cool to even say that you had an encounter, where before, if you're like, hey, I think I saw a Bigfoot, people would just rip you apart. Nowadays, again, it's cool. Marketing is, there's people are using, Bigfoot to market stuff. I mean, you've got, Jack Link's, you got the Sasquatch pizza, you got all these things now, coffee companies popping up now. So again, it's now it's cool. So, for people to come out and say that they had an encounter of something 6 foot tall that, resembled a canine. I mean, again, it's cool now, I remember.
sorry, I was going to say, and we've had that discussion. That's good and bad. It's gotten more people interested in the field, but then it puts into question more of the reports because you get more people wanting the glory, wanting to be noticed, their 5 seconds of fame. So then everything becomes questionable and untrustworthy. That's why, you know, we've talked about it. Like if we go out and we have a camera, we have an EMF, whatever instruments we have, if we pick something up, you know, we've got to know that when we put it out there, there's going to be people saying, yeah, it's all fake. It's all this, that, and the other thing. And that there's going to be some people that immediately say, oh, they did this and whatever. But we've got to be very careful that, you know, we're only putting out, here's what we got, here's what we saw. You know, so it does make the field a little more treacherous in some ways. But as I told Colin before, the shows brought so many people into it. You know, your book is doing very well. You know, 20 years ago, would it have done as well? You know, that's debatable.
And we probably wouldn't be going to conferences either, Kenny. That's the truth as well, too. You know, whenever I was a kid, I remember, you know, Stan Gordon in my area was the big guy. And we would see him every now and then.
Yeah, you just keep bragging about that, make the rest of us feel bad. You grew up with it. Okay, we got
it. That's right. I just remember, you know, he would do a show at the mall or something like that. But now, you know, you have all these shows in production right now. And it's just, I mean, almost every network has some sort of paranormal show related to it. And without that coming into the mainstream, we wouldn't have that. But like Stephen said at that point as well, too, whenever you're dealing with something that seems incredible, you need to have incredible evidence for it to be, you know, brought to the mainstream and say, okay, this is what's going on. A lot of people are going to have their experiences, but until we actually come together as more or less as a community, that's what Benjamin Radford, that's his name, correct, Colin? I think he is.
That's Ben Radford.
Yeah, he said that one of the greatest threats to you know, cryptozoology is the cryptozoologist. You know, it's these people that are not doing the research. It's the people that are undermining each other. And I think that we really have to take that into consideration, that when we're out there doing research, we have to, you know, gather things because people are going to want some extraordinary evidence to show that things exist.
Yeah, you know, and one of the things when my group goes out, what we try to do is, for the most part, is like when we come back, like people will be like, oh, what'd you find, this and that. If we found nothing, we tell them nothing, you know. And what I've noticed with a lot of groups that go out, they tend to come back with something every single time, this incredible experience. And I you know, I'm not criticizing, I just don't understand. It makes me kind of second guess and question what they're showing me, because again, I mean, I mean, the leader of the group that I'm with, I mean, he's been doing paranormal investigation for like 26, 27 years. And, you know, he's like, yeah, sometimes you don't find anything. And so we come back and we say, hey, we didn't find anything. But I've noticed that there's groups that go out and every single time they come back with, you know, all this stuff. And it's just like, did you really logically look at that and say, okay, this is why could be this? Or you just saying, okay, everything's got to be a Sasquatch or it's paranormal, you know, everything. So we try to go out and again, you know, just come back and be honest with people. And the big thing that I found, which is there's a couple things that I've noticed in the community that some people call them big no-nos. One, using the word theory, because if you're using the word theory, you're telling somebody that they didn't see what they saw or what they experience. And that's not the whole point of theory. Just saying like, this is my theory right now. My theory, I can change my theory. And then the other thing is just saying, I don't know. You know, nowadays it's hard to see people. It's like they feel like, oh, I'm losing credibility if I say I don't know. It's like, no, you know, for me, you're actually gaining it because, you know, how can you say 100% again that you know 100% in a subject again that has no accountability right now? You can't go down to the library. And what I mean by that, and I always use this example. if somebody says to me, you know, black bears turn their skin inside out during the summer to stay cool, well, I can go down to my local library, read up on it, and find out that's not true. With the paranormal, with cryptids, with Bigfoot, there is no accountability. So anybody can say whatever they want. So, I just, when people don't have answers, I'm a little more drawn to the people that don't have answers than the people that have an answer for everything.
Right. And I'm laughing because what you just said, Colin, he keeps us on track. He tells us that all the time, same type of things. And heck, put us together and we don't know hardly anything.
Yeah.
We'll admit that.
There's a question from our matrix
Yes,
group, Gina.
our mom.
Actually, I have two questions. You're talked about cryptids most of the time. Do you believe in ghosts and aliens, or other paranormal? Is my first question. And then secondly, we asked how your daughter felt about what you do. How about your wife? How does she feel?
Sure. So for the first question, so I've always okay. So I'm a Christian. I love God, follow Jesus. So, but with that, I do believe that there has to be spirits. I believe that there's both. There's good and there's evil. So yes, I do believe that does exist. Absolutely. Aliens, extraterrestrial. Yeah. I mean, why not? And especially nowadays, now that they're actually, coming out saying, yes, oh yeah, by the way, these exist.
Right.
And I always find it funny, and I always say this, that they decided to wait till there's a pandemic, to say, oh, there's aliens, but by the way, Corona is going to kill you. So it's just like, okay, wait a minute. So did you say there's aliens, or where was I going with that? I was going somewhere. I went off the rails. So what was that first question?
You were saying you're Christian, you believe in good
and
evil.
Yeah. So I do believe that there is, the spirits and different things like that. And then for the second question, what does my wife think? She thinks it's cool. She's pretty much since the second week of dating me thought I was a dork anyways. So, the first 2 weeks I was able to hide it, but then after that, I couldn't do it anymore. She thinks it's cool because, she knows it's my passion. I love it. I love legend. I love lore. I love anything that, is just kind of, doesn't really have answers to it, so again, she thinks it's neat. She thinks it's really cool. And
are you sure that she's just not happy you get out of the house for a whole weekend every now and then?
No, she tries to. No. She look at all this. You think she wants this to go away? Come on.
Good answer.
But yeah, no, she does. One, because it makes me happy, and she wants me to be happy. And we've been together 23 years. We've been married 22. So we've already gone through that area in our marriage where, we were selfish and only cared about what we wanted. So we made it through that. So now we're on the other side where we care about what each other wants. So, she thinks it's really neat. She, thinks it's really cool. So, it's good. She laughs at me a lot, but it's, that's par for the course. So,
Colin threw into chat. Colin, you there? About go ahead.
So it wasn't really. I don't know how much of this you might know because it's international stuff and it's vague, pretty obscure. So the Lena Pisca, that piqued my interest, and I looked it up real quick, and the translation roughly of what the name is, it means true tiger, and it gets equated to the lynx a lot. Well, there is an interesting trope in mythology in various points around the world of these water cats, often in the field are called water lions. And I did some digging about American ones because I hadn't heard of any of them before. I just knew that there were some legends in Africa and in Asia. And I found there's a larger branching name. They were just called underwater panthers and Mishi Pishu, and they're localized to the Great Lakes region. I thought that was interesting. And I did want to ask really quick, the Lenapisca, what was your resource on that? Where did you find that out? Because I was having a hard time just in my rough Googling finding any good like information about it.
Sure.
Mystery cats are a special interest of mine, so I was curious.
Yeah. So, again, it all started with which tribe I was going to follow and highlight in that chapter. That's where it started. So it was a lot of Google search on history of the tribe, and really putting in key search words like legend, fear, different avenues like that to try to bring up not the stuff that everybody's constantly looking up, but to really kind of dig in there and pull up different histories and different avenues that were going to bring me kind of in the direction that most people aren't really going into. So there were certain material that I went out and looked up to try to find and get some more answers. But it all started with whichever tribe that I picked. Looking in their history, researching their history again of how they lived, what they wore for clothes, how they hunted. And then from there, it was pretty much just, going in and putting, the name of the tribe in and, lore, legend, fear, different keywords to start bringing up information that I wouldn't necessarily find just by putting in like lore, something like that, or Native American and monsters or Native American and beliefs. I just put a lot of different words in to try to pull up information because, again, with the book, I didn't want to just keep regurgitating and recycling what everybody else has already done. So it was just getting those word searches going, and then diving in and just going until I was running into the uncommon information, the not so much really focused on information. And then from there, just kind of backtracking it out to find out how to actually put it in the book, and also put it in such a way where I wasn't adding to how it was described and what their fears were, but I was taking it and putting it in there in a respectful way, if that makes sense.
Nice. And again, I like the whole Native American aspect. I think there's not been enough correlation and research between all the cryptids and what we hear about now and what the Native Americans may have put down in their fashion.
So real quick, I did want to jump in with the Native American discussion because I missed it when we were talking about it earlier. I don't necessarily disagree, but I do caution that a lot of these things are still living beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of tribes, specifically when it comes to the wild man legends, there have been several tribes that have spoken out against Bigfoot groups using their religious imagery as pieces of evidence. The best example of that is the hairy man pictographs in California, the Yokit, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, the Yokit tribe. These hairy men had specifically attachments to their creation myths, and a lot of Bigfoot researchers were using them, and a lot of high-level Bigfoot researchers were using them as just, here's a picture of a Bigfoot that some Native Americans drew on a rock. And I think that when you're using living beliefs, like a lot of these legends are, it can be a kind of, it's a risky thing to do, and I think that it takes
Yep.
a lot of legwork, and I think that it
I
takes a
agree.
lot of respect. And I also think that there's a lot of context that doesn't necessarily always get added in.
And
No,
that's
I 100% agree with you on that. And again, you know, when we go back to what I was saying before, where I didn't want to have my opinion in anything, and so when I presented what they, you know, how they lived and what they believed, because there were obviously, you know, every tribe, there was more than just you know, a water cat, you know, that they, there was many different ones. So so when I put it in there, my point in it, and like in the beginning of the book, like in the introduction and in the front of it, I even put in there why I have this section in there, where so I guess in a sense some people could see it as a disclaimer. I put it in there because it's where I get my knowledge from and my respect for what they've passed down. So I definitely 100% agree. I've seen some stuff where people put it in there and they're like, well, this is evidence of Bigfoot. Okay, well, where did you get that from? Is that your opinion? You know, so mine, when I presented it, again, I tried to leave kind of like my opinion out of it and present them in a way where they're kind of the reason behind what I do. So again, at the beginning of the book, there's a section in there where I talk about where, you know, we know what we know, and that credit goes to the Native Americans, where I definitely 100% know what you're saying, where a lot of, you know, Bigfoot researchers and cryptid researchers, they use it to say, okay, well, this is why what I'm saying is true, because they're saying it. So this just backs up what I'm out doing every single day.
Yeah.
I don't know if I landed on it there.
Sure. I do have another question along the same line though. So you talked to a lot of Bigfoot witnesses to get those reports. Did you talk to any members of these tribes that are still around about their stories, about their beliefs?
I have talked to some. A lot of the time when you do talk with them, they don't give a whole lot of information. What I found is that it's kind of their story, kind of like you had said earlier. So you're not really let in on it. So no, not really. I wasn't really able to be given. I wasn't given access, if you will, to be able to, and for good reason, because there's a lot of people that go to them that want to get information from them to prove their theory and where they're going with it. So I think there's a lot of tribes people out there right now that will talk, but a lot of them won't, based off of where I think, in a sense, and there's been a lot of people that have come through and use them to a sense where it's almost to a point where they've kind of abused them.
And I think Colin's example of the people using the things but not treating it with any respect is exactly why.
Yeah, I was just curious about that. And then I got one more. No, well, not really a question, but bouncing off of what you said, there's also like a colonial vibe to like people, white people going in and being like, hey, I want to talk about your legends because I got this pet Bigfoot theory, or even just I'm interested in these things because a lot of these people have been just screwed over so heavily that there's just not a lot of trust. I was just honestly curious there.
Yeah, you know, and that's the thing too, is, you know, it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier, you know, with doing, you know, lectures, and, you know, people are gonna be more accepting if you come there and you show that you know about them. And I think a lot of researchers have gone to them not knowing a thing about them, just looked something up and said, okay, well, this tribe believed this, so I'm going to go and I'm going to try to talk to them. but they know nothing about their history. They know nothing about where they've come from, what they're doing. And, to be honest with you, yeah, I mean, you're going to feel used, and I would feel the same exact way. That, it's like, you don't even, and you'll notice too, in the book, the way that I do it, I don't start out with the Native American lore. I start out with the tribe and talk about the tribe and what they did, how they've done it, over the years, how they've hunted this and that. So I don't bring it up until later, because for me, I want the reader to know about the tribe. I want them, and you'll notice too, the majority of that section talks about the tribe, talks about the tribes people, talks about the wife, what their different duties were. And then towards the end of it is when you get some of the lore. But you'll notice the majority of it is their history and kind of where they came from, what they hunted with. And that was by design, because again, I just didn't want to just talk about lore. What they believed in that aspect, because one, again, so many people have done it, and two, again, at the beginning of the book, I start out saying that I give, for these legends and, a lot of what I've known and researched, I give credit to the Native American people. So I really wanted to present them and highlight them, in a light, talking about them, and then following it up with a smaller portion about what they do, or what they believed in regard to an actual cryptid, actual legend, actual spirits. Because again, a lot of people, they start their history, and if we're talking about Bigfoot, a lot of people start the history back in 1967, October 20th, 1967, Patterson Gimlin. They go from there forward. I started there and went backwards, because I really wanted to know where these stories came from, why people were doing what they were doing, and I wanted to learn about the people that actually brought forth these stories, and these legends and these beliefs that we nowadays read about and talk about. Again, where it actually came from, and in how the people lived, what they did, and more importantly, how they survived.
I think, personally, I think it'd be very interesting and some good research if we could delve into some of the Native American lore, and like you guys were saying, put some respect into it and bringing it out as a history, not so much as a cash grab. Because I think there could be a lot of interesting things that a lot of us don't know about. If for no other reason than we're losing that slowly even more. And speaking of, so Kenny, do you have any plans for a follow-up book to what you've written?
I do, yeah. It's actually, I've got the outline for it, and it's going to be along the same lines, but it's going to be more. It's not going to have anything to do with the United States. It's going to be international. So I've talked about this a little bit. So I'm pretty much picking 12 different countries. And I'm going to do something similar that I did with American Cryptids, where I want to talk about the country. I want to talk about its history. I want to go into because there's tribes in these different countries. I want to bring forth a tribe and talk about them, and the people from that area. Again, the same way that I did in American Cryptids, and because every country's got its cryptid, it's got its crazy cryptid. I started already working on one of the chapters, and they've got a cryptid that is like a snake elephant type creature that has some kind of it's got a spirit behind it as well, but it's just a cryptid that lives in a cave that many people have claimed that they've seen. So I'm going to do something very similar, but instead of American cryptids, it's going to be international cryptids.
Nice. All right. Before we go, anybody have anything else to ask Kenny here?
Yeah, I have one more question. Kenny said earlier that his group, so you and your group actually go out and search or go on hunts, you look for evidence. You do that? Oh, that's okay.
Yes. Yep.
We should go to New York and do a camping thing with you guys.
Yeah. I mean, we, the founder of our group, Gary, he's also one of the reasons I joined the group. And I like to, say this on every show I'm on, just, brag on Gary. He's a great guy. And two, he's like a survivalist. Like, you could drop him in the middle of nowhere and he would know how to get back. He would survive. And that was I knew I was really, really weak. So when I was looking, to join a group out here, the first thing I looked for was somebody that, was going to be able to teach me and, show me the ropes, this and that. And he's done that. He's one of those guys where if somebody gets lost in the woods, you send Gary, and Gary's not only going to find them, but, he's going to find 3 other people that nobody even knew was missing. He's just awesome all the way around. And our research area is in the Whitehall, New York area. It's out in the Adirondacks, and everybody knows that Whitehall's the East Coast epicenter for Sasquatch sightings, and so that's our area. But we're called the New York Bigfoot Society, but we really we look at all cryptids. Like, I'm kind of the cryptid guy in the group. Gary is definitely big. He knows a lot about Sasquatch, and he's done a lot of history, and again, just done a really good job in about 26 or 27 years, being a paranormal investigator. And he's one of those guys where if he finds nothing, he tells you, I found nothing. Or if he found something and it was like, okay, well, this is a reasonable explanation for this, he's going to say that. And I really respected that. So I've been with the group probably for a little over 2 years now, and it's been great. We have captured some strange happenings, and we've debunked some stuff, and there's other stuff that we can't explain. And so I don't get out as much as he does. But I'm hoping to this summer, because last year was a bust almost all the way around.
Yeah, count me in, man. I think that sounds like a fantastic time.
That'd be cool.
Yep.
All right. Well, Kenny, thank you very much coming on, being our first official guest. Appreciate it. It was a good talk.
Thanks for reaching out. It was awesome. It's good to actually hear Ron's voice. I know what he looked like, but
yeah, and hopefully our paths will cross when we meet each other physically.
We will.
Camping up that way.
We will. Yeah, no, absolutely. And something will happen. We'll run into each other, we'll hopefully get booked at the same event eventually. And, this year, I took it really slow and, with booking events, because last year, like I had a ton of places and they all canceled. And so, nice. Yeah. So, and I know a lot of people lost a lot of money. People lost deposits, a lot of the organizers lost deposits, lost this and that. So there's a lot of people I know that actually, it's part of their income. They do it for a living. Like my friend Ken Gerhard, he wrote the introduction for the book. Like, it's what he does for a living. So this year I've been going really kind of slow, because I don't want to take any funds away from anybody, so I'm just so I'm booked at like five events this year, and that's probably going to be it unless something else comes up, that's they're like, hey, we really want you here. But other than that, I'm just kind of taking it slow this year and just kind of seeing what happens. And they're great events. I'm looking forward to them, and I hope they don't cancel. And again, I hope we're able to connect at one of them sometime soon.
Absolutely, my friend. Absolutely.
All right. Well, Kenny, I hope you have a great evening. It was great talking to you. We'll let you know when we go live. We're working on that.
And thanks for stepping inside the cryptid click.
Yeah,
that's right. The cryptid click. That's right.
Normally I don't like clicks, but this one I enjoyed.
This is a cool one. We have chocolate chip cookies and all our chicks wear black.
Where do we have chocolate chip? I didn't get chocolate chip cookies. All right.
That's awesome.
All right. Thanks, Kenny.
Thanks,
All
guys.
right. Thank you guys.
Yep.